I showed up to the party with a 4-pack of Doom Bar Amber Ale, a 4-pack of Stella, and a bottle of Shiraz. That should have been enough for almost everything. I wasn't invited, but my best friend Brian was going to come with his longtime girlfriend Claire. So he asked me to go with him. He actually called me and asked if I could come to the party and watch Claire. He was having problems at work and was going to be late. He didn't like leaving her alone with all the office catchers. I was lonely at that moment. It was a birthday party for a girl from Claire's office. She worked as a secretary for a local lawyer, one of the few, so it was assumed there would be one or two single girls there. Oh, and it was cheaper to go to a noisy party than a pub on a Saturday night. The front door was open, so I walked in and, leaving my drinks in the kitchen, which was full of men and beer, went in search of Claire. I saw her talking to a guy in the corner of the living room. I saw him shrug and walk away. When I approached her, she smiled at me and said, "I'm glad you're here. Brian's going to be a little late, some broken-down van or something." I told her I knew about it since he had asked me to keep her company. She touched my arm. "Thanks for that. They keep trying to get me to talk. Get me a drink, please. I don't want to go into the kitchen. It's like entering a lion's den." Brian worked as a transportation manager for a local delivery firm and called me to say he was going to be late because he was going to either fix the van or reload the load into another one so the driver could finish the delivery. He'll be here as soon as he can, so could I look after Claire until he gets here? He was a little nervous about her being alone. It was a party for a girl she knew from work, so it shouldn't be a problem. She'd find someone to talk to. I figured he was a little paranoid, but whatever. He's my buddy, he asked, and I'll do it. Brian and I have been friends since we went to elementary school at the age of 4, which is almost 22 years ago, and we've helped each other all that time. He helped me through my first heartbreak when I saw my then-girlfriend Sharon making out with Charlie. He said we weren't in a relationship, when in fact it was Charlie's 7th birthday party. I helped him when he didn't make the soccer team at 13 in grammar school, and the sportsmaster told him to come back next year when he was taller, healthier, and faster. I sympathized with him, and we started going jogging together. The next year, he made the soccer team and found that he enjoyed running too. Running also helped me get a place as a forward on the school rugby team. We got into a few scrapes over the years, mostly over broken windows and being late for lessons because we farted. Setting fire to the trash can behind the sports pavilion when we tried our first cigarette didn't please the principal. A 2-week suspension plus extra homework for lung cancer research made us both quit smoking for life. The bullies decided it wasn't worth taking on 2 of us and after a while left us alone. College came along. Brian studied business and I studied accounting. While studying, we continued to play sports. I called him Ponty because he would run around kicking a ball and falling over as if in pain. He called me a chubby Neanderthal because I would run around and throw myself at other men. And honestly, most of the players I play with definitely look like Neanderthals. Through all this exercise, Brian and I became pretty fit. Brian got a job as an assistant transportation manager, which really meant office dog body and driver when needed. I got a job as an assistant accountant at a local engineering firm, which meant office dog body and someone who knew how to use a calculator and do simple, boring work. Then cars and beer were added to the girls. Endless days of fun for 2 young guys in good physical shape. Over the years, the company found that Brian had organizational skills, finding ways to expand the business and work more efficiently. After a few years, he was promoted to deputy transportation manager. I found that the wrong numbers just kept coming off the pages, either by mistake or on purpose to hide something. And after a few years, I became deputy chief accountant. I called him a van balancer, couldn't think of anything worse, and he called me a bean-carrying Neanderthal, which wasn't far from the truth. Then he met Claire, but that was normal. It was always going to happen. We always knew that one day we would meet the girl of our dreams and everything would change. We talked about it. I just hoped I would be the first to find the woman I would spend the rest of my life with. I liked Claire. She was right for him. He was less reckless, more down to earth. It didn't hurt that she was very good looking. 5 feet tall, long black straight hair parted down the middle. She was very pretty, and when she smiled, it lit up her whole face. I know I shouldn't do this, but I have to say her body looked pretty good too. They dated for a little over 2 years. She had moved in with Brian about 6 months ago, but I had heard rumors that she hadn't sold her apartment, just rented it out. I didn't often get the chance to talk to Claire alone, so I asked the question that had been rolling around in my head for a while. So when are you two getting married? Subtlety wasn't my strong suit. She looked a little embarrassed. Brian's been dropping hints, but I keep telling him I'm not ready yet. She looked at me as if she'd given away some secret. Don't get me wrong, I really do love him. He's kind, considerate, sweet, funny, and really, really nice. I felt something was missing, something she wasn't telling me. So why haven't you made a date yet? I've known him for the last 20 plus years. He's a great guy, a great buddy. And I'm looking forward to being best man and getting to mess around with some of your bridesmaids. She got a little serious and I tried to lighten the mood. It didn't work. We were standing in a corner so it was quiet. She turned to face me and put her hand on my arm. Dave, she looked me straight in the eye. It was a little unnerving. I've known you for a few years now, so I know you can keep a secret, but as good as Brian is, there's something missing. Now I was confused. I had seen these two together for the last couple years. They were amazingly matched. They always seemed to be able to tell what the other was thinking. I never know what a woman is thinking, even when she tells me what she's thinking. It's just, well, he is. Damn, this is so embarrassing. Of course. Do you have girlfriends to talk to about stuff like that? Oh God, no. I know what they'd say right now. But they're not in love with him. And at least you're his best friend. I put my hand over hers. Look, you can trust me. I love you like family. Anything I can do to help. I don't know if you can, it's just damn, he's not very good, she whispered. I only got more confused. What do you mean? She raised her eyes to the ceiling. You mean? I discreetly pointed my finger upstairs where the bedrooms were and then whispered, You mean in the bedroom? She nodded her head. She stood up a little straighter, as if a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. Can you think of anything? What? How the hell should I know? To hell with it. Have you tried talking about it? Tried, but he keeps shutting me out. I'm sorry, but I need more. David, I know you can keep a secret. Is there anything you can do to help me? She put her hand on my arm. I shook it off and took a step back like I'd been stung. Well, shit. Hang in there. I'm his comrade. She looked embarrassed, but then smiled. No, no, silly boy. I don't mean that. I like you a lot, a lot. I mean, you can talk to him, enlighten him. Rumor has it you're not bad. Phew, I was relieved. I don't have fun with married women. Well, only once, okay. Several times with the same one, but it wasn't my fault. She hadn't told me she was married, and she wasn't wearing any rings, and I certainly don't sleep with my buddy's girlfriend. I don't know. I've never been asked that before. It's awkward, but what's the big deal, really? There were tears in her eyes. I love him, but I need more of him, if you know what I mean. That's so unrealistic. I need more beer and you probably need more wine. I'm not enough for 2 cocktails. I just needed time to think. I texted Brian to see how long he was going to be and got a reply that he was on his way to their apartment to change because he was dirty. He would be there in about 20 minutes, maybe less. That gave us 10 minutes to chat and 5 minutes for Claire to come to her senses. I went back and handed her the drink. She drank half of it in one go. She told me she got a text from Brian that he would be in 15 minutes or so. I told her, We've got 10 minutes, so that might be a bit rough. He does turn you on, doesn't he? Yes, but only half the time. And it's over within 5-10 minutes, no long, slow, leisurely screws? About that. I sensed she was about to say something else, but held back. I had too much information in my head as it was. She touched my arm lightly. If you could get him to talk about it, that would be a start. Okay, I'll go get him a beer when he gets here and you go fix your makeup and I promise you I'll think about it. I realized why she couldn't talk to her girlfriends. They'd just say dump him and find someone else, but she loves him. Okay, thanks. She looked at me, put her hand on my shoulder and kissed my cheek. You're like the big sister I can chat with that I never had. I ran my hands up and down her body, towering over her by at least 3 inches. Big sister. Okay, the big brother I can chat with but never had. I'm going to have to start calling you Big Brother. She went into the bathroom to fix her makeup. I went and bought a couple bottles of beer, 2 for Brian since he was standing behind us and would probably need a beer. He got there before Claire got back from the bathroom. On his way through the kitchen, he grabbed 2 mugs of beer. He took one for me so we couldn't shake hands. They were full of beer. I had to fake a manly hug with a beer in my hand. At this point, Claire reappeared, and I tried to hold on to 4 mugs of beer while he hugged and kissed her. He apologized for being late and thanked me for taking care of his girlfriend. He invited me out for a beer on Monday after rugby practice to make amends for leaving her to her own devices. I told him it was no problem. I liked her, all for a friend. But since he was buying beer, I was fine with it. He said he would have been later, but when they were already moving the load from one van to another, the mechanic managed to start the first van. So instead of putting everything back in place, he split the delivery notice in half and sent 2 drivers. They could make up the time and maybe finish the job sooner. Now he was here, and I was to walk around town and try to find available girls. I chatted with a few girls, I managed to dance with a few, and even got a few kisses. I exchanged a few phone numbers, promising that I would call them, but my heart wasn't in it. It was about 11:30 when Brian and Claire came and found me to tell me they were going home. Brian was leaving for a course on Tuesday, so they had things to do. Brian grinned his stupid grin and winked at me. Oh boy. They asked if I wanted to take a cab since they lived near me. I declined. Let the lovebirds drive and have fun. Well, at least one of them did. I stayed until the party subsided and walked home, still a little embarrassed. I met Brian at the pub around 7:30 on Monday. He dragged me to a table instead of standing at the bar like we usually did. He pounced on me without any preamble. I think Claire is seeing someone else. Shit, why do you think that? Well, she wants to have more fun and try other things. I thought we were doing well. We do it 2 or 3 times a week, but she wants more. Sorry, buddy. I don't see the problem with that. I don't know. I don't see it as a big deal. I told him the story of Kathy, a married woman who used me as a boy toy. Oh, I wasn't complaining about being used as a boy toy. My complaint was that she told me she was divorced, but she wasn't. He was in the Navy and away a lot. Apparently that's why she always came to see me and I didn't come to see her. I found this out when she came to see me one day and forgot to take off her wedding ring. This was back in the days when I didn't check for a white stripe or dent on the 3rd finger of my left hand. Along with that, I gave him some tips on how to improve his sex life. I went to the bar. I know he said he would pay, but I needed to stretch my legs and think about something else. While I was at the bar, I hatched a cunning plan. When I got back, I suggested to Brian that since he was going away for a couple weeks and coming home for the weekend, it would be a good time to do some research. I suggested that he use that time to use his laptop and Google stuff like how to improve your life or how to drive women crazy. Then another idea occurred to me. While he was away, I had a few hours of flexible schedule that I had to use or lose. I would discreetly follow Claire on her lunch break. She goes to a hotel near where she works and is a member of a gym, so I could check to see if anything interesting was going on there. I could also keep an eye on their apartment. I happily agreed to this because I was sure she wasn't doing anything. He seemed to like the idea and calmed down. We both went home satisfied, and not just because of the beer. He had a plan to make her life better, and then she would probably marry him. And I gave him peace of mind. I gave my 2 best friends hope. I did what I had promised Brian. I came to the hotel on Tuesday lunch hour, found a quiet corner, saw Claire arrive, and headed to the pool, and went straight to the gym on Wednesday. Thursday was different, and that's what alerted me. She entered the hotel and went straight to the elevator. It was going up to the 4th floor. There was no way I could get up there to see where she went. It was a little over an hour later when she got off the elevator at the same time as the young man. It didn't seem like they were together. They didn't seem to notice each other, didn't talk to each other. Moreover, it seemed as if they were studiously ignoring each other. The young man headed for the counter, and Claire walked out of the hotel. A little out of place, I thought. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up for no apparent reason. Saturday night, all 3 of us gathered at the pub, and I received a few mild chides from Claire for not calling any of the girls in her office. Turns out I was in thinking mode, trying to help my friends by imagining myself as a dark, silent, handsome, mysterious man that some of the girls in her office wanted to study. Bullshit, I was just thinking about my buddies. But let's use this, Claire suggested, and Shirley felt a little more awake. I had her number and set up a date with her for Sunday night. While Brian sat at the bar pouring drinks, Claire leaned over to me and said, I don't know what you said to him last week, but last night was definitely better. There's still a lot of work to be done, but he even seems to want to talk about it. although I thought I heard him say, Her Royal Highness Queen Elizabeth II at one point in the game. Sunday morning, I went to watch Brian play soccer. Claire was there as usual. I stood next to her, not too close. She's not my girlfriend, but she's nice to be around. Not too insistently, I asked if he was getting better. She gave me a leering look, smiled, and said, He talks about all sorts of nonsense, thanks. Brian caught me at the bar after the match while Claire was powdering her nose. Hey mate, thanks for the advice. A Google search on how to improve your life led me to a whole bunch of women's magazines. Not what I expected. Hell, women are weird. Looks like they want to talk. Either way, I have nothing to lose. If I want to marry her, I'll have to give it a go. Thanks, buddy. You should take your own advice. I replied in my usual buddy manner. Back off, asshole. Tuesday, I felt guilty for going to the hotel on my lunch break. But Wednesday, Claire went straight to the pool and then to the gym. I still didn't like Thursday, so I arrived fairly early and saw a young man get off the elevator with Claire and head to the front desk. I got an uneasy feeling. I entered the elevator with him. We went up to the third floor. I got off at the same time as him and tried to look embarrassed. It wasn't hard. I kept an eye on which room he was going into and found a quiet corner, hoping nothing would happen. I was wrong. About 10 minutes later, Claire came out of the elevator and headed for the same room. Damn, what was I going to do now? This could easily destroy the people I loved, if it hadn't already. I went downstairs and waited in the hallway. I decided to give her one chance and see what she had to say. Like last week, they both got off the elevator together, but this time, before they could separate, I stood in front of them. Claire's face lowered. Oh shit. The guy stepped towards me. Claire put her hand on his arm and shook her head. She looked at him and said, Richard, goodbye. I won't see you again. Don't mess with me. He stepped back with a confused look. She held out her hand to me and I saw her eyes fill with tears. She pulled me to a corner of the living room with an alcove. I followed her. The first thing she said struck me to the core. Dave, this is exactly what it looks like, and I'm going to surrender myself to your mercy. I'm going to answer any questions you have, completely truthfully and honestly. And at the end, if you see fit to tell Brian what you saw and what I'm going to tell you about, it will still be absolutely and unequivocally my fault. No blame will be placed on you. With those words, she picked up the phone, and I heard her inform the office that she wasn't coming in this afternoon. She had better things to do than work. I was caught off guard. I had no place to start. And Claire noticed this. She waved to the waiter and ordered a Guinness and a white wine. She was very professional and businesslike. I'd never seen her like this before. And why should I? We weren't in the same work circles. Tears were still in her eyes when she said, You have until the end of the day. It might take a while. I just nodded. We sat in silence, waiting for our drinks to arrive. Guinness takes a very long time to pour. She sat patiently and quietly, but tears were already running down her cheeks, which she wiped away occasionally with a handkerchief. I sipped my Guinness. I think I drank half a pint at a time. She waved for the waiter to bring more. Looking at me with sad eyes, she said, After our conversation at the party, you've probably already guessed what this is about. Do you want me to tell the story or do you just want to ask questions? I didn't understand a damn thing. I put on a confidence I didn't feel and said, You tell the story and I'll ask questions as I go along. She brushed away her tears again. Like I said at the party, I need more than Brian can give me, and he didn't want to talk about it. I didn't see a way out. Richard just feels like he's filling that hole. Hell, that's not what I meant by filling that need. You may find this hard to believe, as many men do, but I can separate entertainment from lovemaking. Sometimes I want to be cuddled, made love to, and then wake up in the arms of a man who loves me. And sometimes I just want a good time. Sorry, you're going to get hurt. Brian can't give me a second one yet. He was damn close on Saturday. Richard's just doing the second part. I saw no choice but to stay with Brian and get the entertainment I needed. And before you ask, I don't work with him. He was someone I met at a lawyer's meeting across town. He's married and has no intention of leaving his wife, and I'm just a side item for him. We see each other once or twice a month when I need to, rarely 2 weeks in a row, but he ticks me off, and when Brian gets back on Friday, I get to snuggle in the arms of a man who loves me. That may not sound reasonable to you, but it does to me. Any questions? She was still acting very businesslike, as if covering herself with a shield. A few, but I'm trying to figure out how much I really want to know. What questions are important? What answers are important? So some of them don't matter because I don't know which ones. Like where you met him and who proposed to whom. It doesn't matter where you met, but who made the first move? That's easy, he heard me say. I could use some good entertainment, turned to me and said, I could do it for a hottie, just so my wife doesn't find out. I thought he was joking. Later, he caught me as I was leaving the women's restroom, took me by the hand, and led me to one of the partners' offices. I won't go into details, but I got what I asked for. Are you sorry? That's a tough question. Am I sorry you caught me? No. Part of me says I'm glad I put myself out there. Part of me says I'm glad you gave me a reason to stop, even if Brian does leave me. Part of me regrets that I won't get any more good entertainment. I'll miss it. Regret that I had to leave Brian. Yes, absolutely. I don't want to say anything against Brian because it's not his fault. It's all my actions. I should have been stronger. Whether I will continue, I don't know. But probably not now that Brian is feeling better. Brian and I have started talking and he took some of my suggestions Sunday night. So I can see a time when Richard won't be needed. Anyway, you forced my hand and Richard will be gone. I don't regret it. She answered several of my questions at once, even the ones I didn't know I wanted answers to, and I wasn't even going to ask them. I didn't want to know how many times once was enough. I wasn't Brian, and that would hurt him and me. And while I cared about her, I didn't love her the way Brian did. Do you love Brian? She didn't answer in the way I expected. You've seen us together. What do you think? I know the fact that you saw me with Richard makes it doubtful, but I'll answer your question. Yes, absolutely. I plan to grow a pair, and the next time he asks me to marry him, I will say yes. You will think I am sly and deceitful, and of course you will be right. You will also ask me if I would do it again. I thought long and hard, and unless Richard took the initiative, no. I have never sought to be entertained. You're asking me if he's better than Brian? Yes, of course he's better than Brian in terms of pure entertainment. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it. It's not an excuse, but if Brian and I could just talk about it and he would listen to me, he could be a lot better. Heck, he's a better person just by talking to you for one night. We're not there yet, and I still want to know, where is Margaret Thatcher here? It sounds like you had it all planned out. You answered all my questions as if you knew you were going to get caught. What's more, you answered some that I didn't intend to ask. No, I never expected to get caught. Those are excuses I used to justify it to myself. But honestly, once I leave Richard, I forget about him until I get the itch. By the way, how did you catch us? When we got off the elevator, we could have been anyone. But the look on your face almost killed me, and I wasn't going to lie to you. I told her that Brian was doubting all of these increased requests to get busy, almost as if he was being coerced. She looked on in amazement, and to reassure him, I offered to follow her because I was sure nothing was going on, and I had the receipts from the hotel to prove to Brian that I was here, and I was going to make him pay for my coffee and beer. I told her that I had seen her last Thursday, and even though there was nothing untoward going on, when I saw her with this guy, my hair stood up. So, I got here earlier in the week, saw Richard checking into his room, followed him, and saw her go into the same room. Shit, she said. It wasn't a guilty pleasure. I was just trying to make him better. I was just trying to make him into the lover I know he can be. He's good at everything else. He just needs a little help with that. Oh shit. I had a lot to think about. I have a couple questions. Why didn't you ask me not to tell Brian? That seemed to throw her off balance. I wouldn't have done that. It wouldn't have been fair to either of you. I wouldn't ask you to choose between me and him. I know what you two have done in the past and how much you cared for each other. I wouldn't ask you to put me above him. I know you like me, but not that much. I'm sorry, I like you and you're a good friend, so I couldn't do that to you too. Before you tell Brian, can I ask you a favor? One last one, because he's definitely going to dump me, kick me out. And I don't think you're going to be my friend for long. She reached across the table to take my hand. I yanked it away like I'd been bitten and didn't let her touch me. I guess I deserved it. Tears stood in her eyes. Let me tell him, please. I'll be honest with him, right down to the fact that you caught us, and I asked you to let me be the bearer of bad news. I can't let his best friend tell him when I'm the one breaking his heart. I looked at her and stood up. I want to scream and yell at you and call you every name under this damn sun. I need to think about it. If I make a mistake, I'll ruin a whole bunch of friendships, mine and Brian's, yours and Brian's, mine and yours, and a whole bunch more. I paused. Until an hour ago, I treasured our friendship. With those words, I left, leaving even a near pint of Guinness on the table. More important than a good beer, or even Guinness. Damn, 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 damn explosion. And damn again. What to do now? The first task is to protect Brian. But how and from what? From his inadequacy, her cheating, his damn heartache? I didn't sleep that night, but I didn't drink too much beer either. Solutions didn't come through the alcoholic haze, but by morning I had a plan. I knew Brian wouldn't be home until 5 o'clock that evening, but I know how these courses can go, especially on a Friday. I don't think he'll be home until closer to 5, and I don't want to be caught deep in conversation with his girlfriend. I sent Claire a message saying, "Go shopping in Waitrose at 10 o'clock. I'll bump into you. We'll have a coffee and I'll give you some options. Delete this message now." I got to the supermarket, grabbed a basket and started wandering around the store stuffing things into it. I don't use wet wipes. I wash my hands with soap and water, so what the hell were they doing in my basket? I knew what a bottle of gin was doing in there. We bumped into each other right at the entrance to the cafe. We went inside, she sat down, and I grabbed 2 coffees. As I handed her mine, I got my first good look at her face. I had seen my face in the mirror, and it looked rough, and I knew how I felt. But she looked much worse and must have felt it too. This time my balls grew and I started. Looking her straight in the eye, in a voice I didn't quite recognize as my own, I began, "Part of me hates you, and part of me loves you like a sister. I didn't sleep last night. As a man, I understand what you're getting at if you want to share the fun and love, because I did. Kathy was a shining example, and as much as I want to hate you for it, I can't. I can't be such a hypocrite. I figured if someone told him you could do what you said, but I have an alternative." Confusion flashed in her eyes. There was only one way this could end for her. "We'll never tell him what you did." I reasoned that she didn't have coffee in her mouth or a cup in her hand. I had never seen anyone look so surprised. When I sat down at the table with the coffee, I think she saw the Grim Reaper sitting on my shoulder. "What? How? When? How? What?" "It's my suggestion. We'll never tell him. There are a few things you said. He gets better. He starts talking. He listens to you. While he was gone, he Googled something on the internet and it led him to a whole bunch of women's magazines. He says women are weird, and he's probably not wrong. But that's why he was more inclined to listen to you this week. You told me what you should have told him. He told me what he should have told you. You two need to talk together. I know you've been trying and he's been fighting you off, but from what I understand from your conversations, it started last weekend. So if you promise me on your mother's grave, and I know she isn't dead yet, that you will never cheat on him and will love him until the day one of you leaves this earth, I won't tell him, and will leave it up to you. I will still listen and help you both because I love you both." The look on her face was as if the Grim Reaper sitting on my shoulder had just fallen off his perch. "You do that for me? For Brian and me?" "Yes, I'll do it for my 2 dearest friends, all their parents. And, quite selfishly, for me too. But if you let him down one more time, I'll spread those sordid details far and wide." She was already openly crying and running out of paper napkins. I even held out my handkerchief to her, having bought a clean and spare one. She'd cried a lot the last few times we'd met. "Hell yeah. Anything, absolutely anything," she said. "We have harsh realities right now, and I hope this helps more." I didn't bother telling her about Sharon Pontic White. I hinted that I'd rinsed my mouth out there and the taste of soap made him think of blowing bubbles. I didn't pursue the subject further. I suppressed the embarrassment in me and told her how I had treated Katie, and I told Brian the same thing. I was trying to help her so she could help him. She sat there with a stunned expression on her face, and I don't know what surprised her more, what I had done, or the fact that I dared to tell her how I had treated Kathy. I got up, I had to leave urgently, and I told her, "I'm completely exhausted, you've worn me out. I'm playing rugby tomorrow afternoon. Maybe I'll see you there, maybe I won't. If you're not there tomorrow as a couple, well, I'll see you then." I walked out. I paid for the gin, but left the napkins. That was it. The deed was done. Time to move on. At least Brian would still be around, of that I was sure. We walked up, slapping each other on the back, yelling at each other, calling each other names as we ran out of the pavilion. Right at the foot of the steps stood Brian and Claire with the biggest smile on their faces. And he was just as happy as Larry. He gave me 2 thumbs up and laughed heartily. I don't remember much about the game. They told me I ran like the wind and we won the game. I didn't see them that weekend or the next. They were gone for a few days. The following Wednesday, I got a phone call from Claire asking if I would be at the club on Friday night. It sounded like she was asking me to come and I said I would. There was a small disco going on, not very loud music, more like background noise. The three of us were sitting in an alcove. Claire had a serious expression on her face and I noticed that she hadn't had too much to drink. She sat between us and suddenly as the music subsided, she turned to Brian. I felt her hand touch my thigh, which was a little strange, but then she found my hand and squeezed it. Looking Brian straight in the face, she said, "Are you going to ask me?" "Ask you what?" "You know, the question you've been puzzling over for the last 6 months." "Oh shit, oh, does that mean you're ready?" Stupid fool, I thought to myself. Or maybe it was the beer. "Well, you won't know until you ask." Surprisingly, he did the right thing. Walking to the edge of the pew, he got down on one knee and said, "Claire Wolstenholme, will you do me great honor and become my wife?" Everyone noticed Brian kneel down and there was silence in the hall. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes," she said. Squeezing my hand lightly, she released it, slid over to him and buried her face in his. 6 months later, they were married. And yes, I fell in love with one of the bridesmaids, but not the main one. She was married. It was Harriet. And she and I dated for the next 18 months. I took Harriet very seriously, and she moved in with me for a while. Now that 18 months after they were married, they had little Daniel, and I became his godfather. That's when Harriet left me. When the christening had subsided and only a few of our close friends remained, I got down on one knee and asked Harriet to marry me. She didn't hold back, stood up, said no, and walked out the door. Everyone was stunned. My two best friends hugged me while I cried. When I got home, Harriet had already moved out. A couple weeks later, we met for a cup of coffee and she explained that she couldn't separate me, couldn't share her love. I had no idea what she meant. 14 months later, Kirsty joined Daniel, and I became a godfather again. I came to this christening alone. Things were going my way. I'd had a few girlfriends over the years. None lasted longer than a couple of years, and I resigned myself to leaving this world a bachelor. I was rarely alone. My two best friends made sure of that. Daniel went into the army. I was at his parade at Sandhurst and Kirsty's graduation from university. Both kids had difficulties along the way, but they turned out to be good people. I was getting on. At 53, you're too old to play rugby. Bones don't heal as well anymore, and I wasn't as fast as I used to be. Brian called me and asked me to meet them on Monday at a pub on the other side of town. We hadn't met at that pub on Monday since the day he told me he thought Claire was cheating on him. That alarmed me a little, but I was even more alarmed when we got there. He was sitting in the same alcove we'd been sitting in all these years, and he looked rough, very rough. I had seen him last week, and he looked rough, but not as bad as he looked now. There was a kind of sadness about him. I started, "You look a bit shit, mate. Is everything all right?" "Actually, no. Everything is pretty screwed up. Remember when we set the dumpster on fire after we smoked our first and last cigarette, and we had to do a lung cancer study? It wasn't lung cancer, but it was cancer, leukemia." I reached out and grabbed it, and my world came crashing down. I opened my mouth to say something, but he held up his hand and I stopped. "Sorry, buddy. This is bad. I just discovered this disease and it's untreatable. I've got a month, no more. I'm never going back to that bloody pub again." At that moment, I noticed Claire standing on the other side of me. She clung to me, and the three of us cried our eyes out. "Isn't there anything they can do?" Claire replied. "No, it's gone too far. We didn't know he had it. He just felt tired, and we went to bed early. When he woke up last week looking like that, I made him go to the doctor, but he refused. He said it was work and he was just tired." I won't describe the next 3 weeks. They were pretty shitty. The week before Brian died, I was at the hospital visiting him. He gave me an envelope and told me to open it when he left. He made me promise not to open it until then. I did. There were a lot of people at the funeral, and we went to the club. Daniel was married and had children, as did Kirsty, and we tried to make it a joyous occasion, a celebration of life. But it was hard work. As we entered the club, Claire asked me if I had the envelope. Yes, it was in the inside pocket of my jacket. I just tapped it, and she smiled at me. I forgot about it until I got home, and then I wasn't in the mood and left it in my jacket. I didn't know how my relationship with Claire would play out. We met for a cup of coffee during the week. She was holding up well, maybe even better than I was. About a month after the funeral, she called me to see if I could come over to their house to help Daniel. They wanted to move some beds. I arrived as requested on Saturday afternoon. Daniel needed help removing an old bed from his bedroom because he was taking it to his house. Then he needed to take the double bed from Brian and Claire's room and put it in his old room. Claire had a new bed. I didn't always understand the logic with which Claire approached the situation. But what she wanted, she got. The new bed arrived just as we finished moving the others, and Daniel and I assembled it. After the sweaty work, we were sitting in the kitchen drinking cold, old speckle hens when Daniel said to me, "Uncle David." He hadn't called me uncle since he left for the army. This was getting weird. "You haven't read the letter yet, have you?" "No, knowing your father, he'll just thank me for everything I've done, which isn't necessary at all. And when I do read it, I'll think it's really gone, all the while leaving the letter unopened, as if part of it is still here." I thought about it for a bit and said to Daniel, "That's not the point. Do you know what's in there?" "I don't know, but I'm guessing. I think Mom wants you to open it." I promised him I would read it as soon as I got home. We drank a few more beers and I headed home. While I was drinking the beer, Claire asked me to let her know when I was coming, in case I wandered into the woods or something. I sent her a text. "It won't be easy." I poured myself a large glass of gin and tonic, which was a lot of gin and not much tonic. I opened the letter and started reading. It was handwritten and had a few crossed-out letters in it. "Buddy, you think that with this letter I am thanking you for being my best friend for over 50 years. And it will make you cry. It will be a trip down memory lanes." Sally kisses Charlie and also vomits into the trash can we just lit with our first and last cigarette. We both got pinks for it, but didn't tell our parents because they would have spanked us again, collecting pocket money to pay for the greenhouse glass we broke with a cricket ball. Actually, should have thrown a tennis ball. My old banger, 20 miles per gallon, because the other 20 miles per gallon leaked out of a broken pipe and we were stuck overnight in Skegness. God, it was so cold to sleep in the car. We had a few girlfriends until we met Claire. That's when I realized she was the one for me. Yeah, that month when I thought she was cheating on me was hard. She was different from everyone else. I cared, really cared, but I was doing it all wrong. I was a bit macho. I thought I knew everything about how to give a woman pleasure. But I didn't. And you, as always, stepped in and helped me. By the way, I found a phrase that really slowed me down. Try to memorize it, much less utter it when you're 2 steps away from dropping your load. Not that you need it, but it works. The Honorable Margaret Thatcher, leader of the Conservative Party, Prime Minister, Her Royal Highness Elizabeth II of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and Queen, head of the Commonwealth, defender of the faith. How bloody difficult it was, but it worked. I know the help you gave Claire in those couple weeks before she accepted my offer. Your decision was the right one. I didn't think so when she told me, but we talked about it. And I'm grateful. Because that decision must have caused you a lot of pain. Calm down, buddy. It was the right one. Because of you, I have lived a wonderful life. I have lived and loved a wonderful woman, and she has given me 2 beautiful children and many grandchildren. Without your clear thinking that day, it would never have happened. Thank you, my friend. Now for the kids. The time you spent talking to Daniel while he was at Sandhurst and struggling. The times you ran miles and miles with him without saying anything. When he came back from Iraq, he told me how you hugged him and poured your heart out to you when he lost that guy in his platoon. He wanted to show me that he could handle it, to make me proud of him. I was glad you encouraged him to come to me. It was very humbling to cry with my son after what he'd been through. You were there for Kirsty when she fell into bad company. She did things her mother and I wouldn't have approved of. She told me how you shouted at her, made her feel so small, told her she was better. We never talked about that little trip to her university with baseball bats. I remember looking at the flames of the bonfire we made out of clothes and baseball bats, and you holding me. And thank you for being there for me and not letting that jerk blind me. This is Claire's first account of that little escapade. I hope we helped you, especially when Harriet left you. We saw how much it hurt. But when she did, and how she did it, and what she said to you, it made us think and look at things differently. Claire and I think that's the reason you're lonely. It's hardest for you, not me, because A, I'm not here anymore. B, Claire and I realized this a long time ago. In fact, you're probably the only one who doesn't see it. You love Claire because you love me as a comrade. You pushed it away. You buried it. Harriet saw it, and so did a lot of other girls. That's why they didn't stay. They loved you, but they couldn't share you. This may come as a surprise to you, but she always really liked you, but after your decision not to tell me what happened while I was away, that liked turned into loved. It started out as brotherly love, but after everything you did for us, it grew. It didn't bother me, because I knew she loved me more than she loved you. And anyway, I love you too. So now, I would like to ask you for a couple more favors. One, take care of my wife as much as you can. She is very, very dear to me, and I know you'll do a brilliant job at that. Two, do not marry her for 1 year and 1 day after my funeral. It's not for me. I'm not here, I'm only in your heart. But my parents might not take it very well. Oh, I think Danny and Kirsty would be over the moon if you asked her. And one more thing. She's a warm, wonderful woman, so please don't wait 1 year and 1 day to cement your love. You have my full blessing. Okay, buddy, that's it for today. I'm tired. And by the way, Claire is sitting next to me as I write this. She helps me when I'm having a hard time writing. So, buddy, I'll ask you to continue to take care of my family as you have done for the last 30 plus years. Goodbye, and thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your best friend in the world, Brian. The letter was soaked with my tears. I couldn't think. I finished my gin and tonic and almost choked. Suddenly, I felt a hand on my shoulder and almost jumped out of my skin. I turned around and there was Claire. She was crying. I really should have locked the damn back door, but it didn't matter. She had a key to my house anyway. Brian and I were right. Do you love me? I don't know. Had I been hiding it all this time to protect Brian? I really don't know. I pulled her to arm's length again. She tilted her head slightly to one side and smiled, her face lighting up. I think you're still trying to hide it, she said. Let me make it easy for you. Since that day at Waitrose, I've fallen more and more in love with you, and it's grown into love. Don't get me wrong. I love Brian a lot more, but who could not love a man for everything you've done for us? I didn't mind being second. She took my hand and led me towards the stairs, looking at me and saying, I think it's time. It was a weird party between Christmas and New Year's Eve, and almost everyone was there. My parents, Brian and Claire's parents, Daniel and Kirsty and their tribes. It was like people were walking on the edge. My 3 dads caught me in a corner. They kind of corralled me. Brian's father, Jonathan, looked me straight in the eye and said, When are you going to ask her? About what? About Claire marrying you, of course. Who said that? Then Claire's father spoke his word. Well, it's obvious to everyone but you. Daniel and Kirsty can't wait. You've been part of their family for so long. This will be the final stage. You're not replacing their dad. You're an added bonus. It's almost like they have 2 dads. I gave in. Jonathan, Brian wrote me a letter before he died. He told me things I didn't know about myself, and yes, I will ask her. But he asked me to wait 1 year and 1 day because he didn't want to upset you. He wasn't sure how you would take it. It was my father's turn. We've watched you grow up and seen the trouble you both got into, and if some of the rumors are true, you've done a few things lately. Jonathan continued. Listen, son, we have your full blessing. Don't wait, don't waste time, and we're not getting any younger. They let me go. I went back into the living room and there was silence. I looked around the room, everyone was looking at me. It was a bloody setup. Brian's mother was fiddling with her fingers. She walked over to me and put something in my hand. I looked down. It was a wedding ring. I'll only lend it to you until you buy yourself a normal one. I was about to walk over to Claire when suddenly she was beside me. I dropped to one knee and mumbled the words. She held out her hand to me, and when I slipped the ring onto her finger, the room erupted in joyous shouts. Not very romantic. I kissed her and whispered in her ear, This is all a setup. How much of this did you know? All of it. Who do you think set it up? I love you. We were married 6 weeks later. I told Daniel and Kirsty never to call me dad, never to call me uncle. They never called me daddy, but to spite me, they sometimes called me uncle with a smile on their face. After all these years, I realized that yes, I did love her. But strangely enough, it was from that day when she was brutally frank with me in the hotel lobby. Her willingness to look at things dispassionately, yet take absolutely all the blame and try to protect Brian and I and our friendship. The end. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed. Subscribe to my channel and watch for the next video.